Hi class, welcome to this week's lesson on conceptual foundations of social welfare policy. So this chapter 3 was pretty dense. It has a lot of very complex, complicated information, and so it actually took me a couple of times to reread some of the ideas and theories and ideologies presented. And so it is a little bit complex, and I just wanted to acknowledge that. And sometimes we read this and it's like, well, how does this really apply? How can I use this um, in my work as a social worker or as an advocate or both? Because a social worker is an advocate, right? Okay, so what are some key takeaways? Well, understanding your own beliefs, ideologies, and ways of knowing society is the first step to analyzing social policies. So everyone has a bias, everyone has their preferences, and these are not things that people don't have, right? Actually, your bias is ingrained or programmed into every human being, and if you think about evolution, they served a purpose, and they serve a purpose, and that's really survival, and to think of things as not good or as dangerous versus, think of things as being safe. And so it's something that we really have to acknowledge and have to work at. Understanding the mainstream ideologies and paradigms and theories help you understand why the systems are in place and how they came to be. And so that's really important, because if you understand why and how, you can actually understand the aspects of how to change and how to make change for the greater good. And social work is all about change, right? Not just at the individual level, but at the macro level as well. And so when I was reading the book, on page 60, we have this figure 3.1. When I was looking at it, I'm going to put it real close so you guys can see. And it has paradigms surrounding theories and surrounding ideologies. And for me, that didn't really make a lot of sense, because ideologies are bigger, and we'll get into that later. But so what I did is I redid that chart to have it make more sense, and hopefully this is helpful. Let's start with theories. Theories are a system of ideas that explain something. They're principles based on a hypothesis and supported by evidence. So theories really come from the scientific inquiry. And in social work, one of the theories around social policy is the cycle of history. And so what that theory tells us is that there's an ebb and flow to social policy. So in American society, there's support for social welfare and the social safety net for a number of years, and then that support wanes, and then there's more support for individualism, and less support for social welfare programs and policy. So when that happens, funding gets cut. Congress is finding ways to limit access to these programs and reduce spending, and then it goes back. So one example of that is from 1934 through the end of the 60s, early 70s. We had the New Deal, which was very supportive of social welfare and where Social Security was established. After World War II ended in 1945, the pendulum, so the support swung to the other side, and so that's when more individualism was emphasized in our society and policies. And then in the 60s, with the civil rights era and the war on poverty, the pendulum swung to the other way, for more support for social welfare and social programs such as like Head Start. The food stamps program was established in the 60s. Medicare, Medicaid programs were established in that era. So when we say pendulum, it swings back and forth to support social policy and swings back to not support social policy. And so that's what we mean by the cycles of history. And so for theories in social work, they explain at the micro level, they explain human behavior, but at the macro level, they explain social issues. Paradigms are larger ideas and even sets of multiple theories that are patterns and modules that provide conceptual frameworks. And they are driven by values, there's assumptions, and there's basic concepts. So concepts and theories that explain how something works. And so if you think of a paradigm as kind of a lens to view society, so it's a way of viewing reality for a community of people. And so, think about it as like the lens that you see the world from. And paradigms are very prominent especially in intellectual disciplines. So we have in the book, they talked about the social work paradigm. So we teach a lot from that paradigm, and it's really reinforced by our NASW Code of Ethics and values that are driven in the code. And so here's where we differ, or where this model differs from what's presented in the book. Because ideologies are actually bigger than paradigms and theories. They're ideas and bodies of thought. So it's ideals, it's the myths, it's doctrines that say this is how things should be and this is how we should act and this is how society needs to be structured and organized. It's action oriented. So we need to do something about any particular issue. We need to get more people on board with us with our ideology. It's symbolic. It's emotional. And so if you look at the bottom here, I put the isms. So there's two that are widely present in today's society. It's conservatism and liberalism. As two of the isms that are really kind of clashing and butting heads, it seems like all the time now in our national politics. But something that's larger than all of these that I always want to include and discuss, and that's culture. And I will move to the next slide to talk about that a little bit more. So culture is really bigger than ideologies, theories, and paradigms. And so I'm going to read this definition. Culture is a way of life of a group of people, the behaviors, beliefs, values, and symbols that they accept, generally without thinking about them, and they are passed along from one generation to the next by communication and imitation from one generation to the next. So when we think about culture, these are the things that we get from our parents and our community and our family. They involve religion. And so it's important to know because not everybody comes from the same culture, especially in the Southwest. We're so diverse. And so understanding that, you'll understand the perspective of others and how that informs their ideologies and ways of looking at things and values when it comes to social policy. And so an ideology that many of you are familiar with is the American dream. The American dream is the idea that people want to come to the United States for individual liberty, for freedom. They want to be part of a democracy and vote and have a voice in the way that their policies and government structured. The idea that opportunity is available and you can get ahead in our society, and that this opportunity is equally available to everybody. So that's an ideal, that everybody has access to these things. And so I share this survey here on what Americans think of the American dream. And so there's a link here too as well that you can click on and you can read the whole report. So it's pretty interesting. But if you look at it, having personal freedom was highly valued in the survey, and achieving influence was not so much valued. So that's materialistic goals, being a billionaire, a millionaire, or having power, I guess you could say. Interestingly, being in harmony with nature was pretty low as well. And this was done in 2014. Let's talk about a paradigm, the social construction paradigm, which was discussed in the book. So what this paradigm tells us, remember, this is a lens that the world is viewed, and this is something that was articulated in academia, specifically sociology. And so what this says is that realities are socially constructed. Realities are constituted through language. Knowledge is sustained by social processes. Reflexivity in human beings is emphasized. And what that means is that human beings have more influence over their environment rather than the environment having more influence over humans. So these social constructs are understood and accepted by society at large. Okay, so what I mean by social construct is these sort of widely accepted norms in society, and something that's been really impactful is the nuclear family, the American nuclear family. So what is a modern American family? You typically see statistics saying that, it's a man and a woman that are married, and they'd have on average 2.5 children. So most families have 2 to 3 children. And so if this is the idea around what a family is, then our social policies are going to be designed around this social construct. And so a lot of the policies and social welfare programs were established with that idea in mind. And I've provided a link to this article on the fact that nuclear families aren't necessarily the norm these days. And then for many cultures, the extended family is very important, has been important traditionally, and is still important. So we have to acknowledge that. And that's where culture comes in. And I wanted to bring that in to this because I didn't really talk about that in the chapter. And so a theory, it talks about the critical theory here in the book. Here's an example. So there's different critical theories. There's critical race theory, there's critical feminist theory. So basically what any critical theory is examining power structures. And the critical race theory examines power structures that maintain racial inequality. And so it's a way of viewing disparities and institutional racism that's embedded in our societies. And so you can see the 5 tenets of the critical race theory. I'm not going to get into those. But, it's important to note that theories are supported by evidence. So a theorist that is using the critical race theory would use disparity statistics. So on the right, you can see some disparity statistics that are specific to Arizona, the U.S., and specifically the Tucson area. And I provided a link down here. And what we were looking at is the poverty rates. And then so you can see that in Tucson, the American Indian Alaska Native poverty rate is at 40%. And then which is much higher than most. And then if you go down the ladder, I guess you could say the lowest poverty rate in Tucson is white, non-Hispanic. And so someone that's using the theory, it would say it's because of institutionalized racism, that there's structures embedded in society that create Native Americans, and then we also have Asians and Black, African Americans that are higher, other races, 2 or more races. Interestingly, the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander population is about the same as a white non-Hispanic, maybe a little bit higher. But overall, what you see is this disparity and higher rates of poverty for people of other racial categories. And so someone from the critical race theory would critique that. So here's some references. You can click on them to learn more. If you go to Google Scholar, you can look up this article that I cited for this presentation, and these other articles that are here. And this is a direct link to the Slate article on families, and here's that poll that I presented earlier. Next steps, read chapter 3 of the text. And then what you want to do is research a media article published in a major news outlet. So the topic must be a social welfare policy issue. Okay, so you want to make sure that it focuses on social welfare policy. The article must be no older than 6 months. And you need to complete the assignment. There's not a lot of content on this module. I'll probably post some more stuff on there as I find them throughout the week. So follow the directions. Don't forget to include a link to the article on the assignment, and then you'll submit the assignment as a Word document or PDF. And the assignments are due on Sunday at 11:59, so don't forget to turn that in. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, and I will be looking for your assignments and look forward to reading what you find. So have a great day. Thank you, and take care.